The cold wind howled through the trees as Lady Eleanor clutched the tiny bundle tighter against her chest. The child was barely a few days old, his soft whimpers swallowed by the roar of the rushing river ahead. Her breath came in shallow gasps, her heart pounding against her ribs. She had to do this. The boy, this wretched infant, had ruined everything. From the moment he was born, King Aldrich had eyes for no one else. His heart, once hers, now belonged to his newborn son. Even the castle servants whispered about the boy's golden fate. The true heir, the prince who would one day rule the land. Eleanor had spent years trying to give the king a child, but fate had been cruel. And now his second wife had succeeded where she had failed. She had waited for the perfect night, slipping away from the castle under the cover of darkness. No one had seen her take the child. No one would ever know what happened. With a final, shaky breath, Eleanor stepped closer to the edge of the river. The icy water churned violently, eager to consume. She whispered, "Goodbye, little prince." And then she let go. The child let out a sharp wail as he tumbled from her arms, disappearing into the dark abyss of the river. The current seized him instantly, pulling him away. Eleanor watched for a moment, her lips curving into a cruel smile. The child was gone. The throne would belong to her again. With her heart light and victorious, she turned and disappeared into the shadows. But the river was not so easily swayed by human cruelty. As the child drifted downstream, his cries pierced the night air, carried by the wind. And fate listened. Old Harold had been a fisherman for nearly 40 years. His hands, rough with calluses, worked through his net as he stood knee-deep in the river. The night was bitterly cold, but he was used to it. Fishing had been his life since he was a boy, and though the years had worn his body down, he still found peace in the river's song. But tonight the river sang a different tune. A cry, faint yet sharp, echoed across the water. Harold's brow furrowed. No bird made a sound like that. He pulled his net up, ready to cast it again, when something caught his eye. A small, white bundle bobbed along the surface of the water, drifting toward him. His heart clenched. With swift hands he reached out, catching the bundle just before the current could snatch it away. It was heavier than he expected, and then a cry, a child's cry. Harold staggered back, nearly dropping the bundle. He unwrapped the soaked fabric with shaking fingers, revealing a tiny, shivering infant. "By the gods," he breathed. The boy's eyes, a deep stormy blue, blinked up at him. His tiny fingers curled weakly, his mouth parting in another cry. Harold's chest tightened. He had never been a father. His wife, Edna, had prayed for a child, but none had come. And now, here, in the dead of night, the river had delivered one. Straight into his arms. He didn't hesitate. Clutching the baby against his chest, he ran back toward his small cottage on the outskirts of the village. Edna gasped when she saw what her husband carried. "Harold, where did—" "No time," he said, already heading for the fire. "Get blankets. He's freezing." Edna didn't question him. She moved swiftly, grabbing warm cloths and wrapping the infant tightly. The baby let out another weak cry, but it was stronger now. Harold could see the firelight glinting off the soft golden hair on his head. "He's a noble child," Edna whispered. "Look at him." Harold knew she was right. The silk he had been wrapped in was not something a peasant could afford. And those features, his strong nose, his high cheekbones, he had seen them before, at the castle. But it didn't matter. The baby had been cast into the river like unwanted trash. If Harold had not been there to catch him, he would have drowned. "He is ours now," Harold said firmly. "The river gave him to us. We will raise him as our own." Edna's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. "Yes." And just like that, the child who was meant to die that night began a new life. His name, they decided, would be Finn, the boy who survived the river. 15 years passed, and Finn grew into a strong young man. He was taller than the other village boys, his body lean from years of hard work. His golden hair shone under the sun, and his sharp blue eyes held an intensity that unnerved those around him. But there was something else, something that set him apart. Finn was faster, stronger, smarter. He could hear things others could not, see details others missed. And deep in his heart, he always felt different. He loved Harold and Edna, but he knew he did not belong to them. He had always felt like an outsider. Then, one evening, everything changed. Finn had been walking by the river when he overheard two villagers talking. The prince, they say, died 15 years ago, stolen from the castle. A tragedy, the other replied, though some say the queen, his stepmother, was the one who did it. Finn froze. A prince, a stolen child, a stepmother, who wanted him gone. His heart pounded. Could it be? Before he could stop himself, he ran back home. "Mother," he said breathlessly, "who am I?" Edna's face went pale. "Finn, why would you ask such a thing? Tell me the truth." His voice was firm. "I found myself in the river, didn't I? You never told me how I got here." Harold stepped forward, placing a hand on Finn's shoulder. "Son, we only ever wanted to protect you." Finn's stomach twisted. He already knew the answer before they spoke the words. "You are the lost prince." The world seemed to spin. Finn staggered back, his heart pounding like a war drum. He was not a fisherman's son. He was a prince, a boy meant to be dead. And if that was true, then his stepmother, the queen, was still ruling, and she had tried to kill him. Finn clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. He had spent 15 years living in ignorance while the woman who cast him away sat on the throne. Not anymore. He was going to take back what was his, and he would make her pay. The revelation burned in Finn's chest like a wildfire. His whole life had been a lie. He wasn't a fisherman's son. He wasn't just another boy in the village. He was the lost prince, the child meant to die. And the woman who had tried to kill him still sat on the throne, living as if he had never existed. His fists clenched at his sides. He wouldn't let stay that way. That night, he lay awake in his small bed, staring at the wooden ceiling above him. His mind was racing, filled with questions, with anger, with a growing thirst for justice. He had to go to the castle. He had to see the woman who had thrown him away. But how? He was just a fisherman's boy. No one would believe him if he walked into the royal court and declared himself the lost prince. The queen would deny it. She would have him thrown into the dungeons, or worse, killed before he could speak another word. No, he needed proof. He needed a plan. He turned to Harold and Edna sitting by the fire. His heart ached for them. They had saved him, raised him as their own, loved him. But this wasn't his life. "I have to go," he said quietly. Edna's hands stilled over her sewing. Harold sighed, staring into the fire. They had known this day would come. "We can't stop you," Harold said after a long pause. "But you must be careful, Finn. The queen is dangerous." Finn nodded. He already knew that. Edna wiped a tear from her cheek. "If you must go, take this." She reached into a small wooden box and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. When she unraveled it, Finn's breath caught in his throat. It was a royal pendant, gold, adorned with the emblem of the kingdom. "We found this with you the night the river brought you to us," Edna said. "It proves who you are." Finn took it, his fingers tracing the smooth metal. This was his, a piece of the life that had been stolen from him. Harold placed a hand on his shoulder. "Go, find the truth. But do not let anger guide you, boy. It will turn you into the very thing you wish to destroy." Finn met his father's gaze, his true father, the man who had raised him, not the king who had abandoned him to fate, and nodded. Then, before dawn, he set off for the castle. The road to the royal city was long and dangerous. Finn had never been beyond the village before, but he moved quickly, his heart set on his goal. He passed through dense forests, crossed small rivers, and walked through towns that whispered of a kingdom ruled by a cruel queen. "She raises the taxes every year," one merchant grumbled, "bleeds the people dry while she sits in her golden halls." "She wasn't always this way," an old woman muttered. "Not until the first queen died and she married the king." Finn listened. He learned. His stepmother wasn't just a monster to him. She was a monster to the entire kingdom, That only strengthened his resolve. After a week of travel, he reached the capital city. The castle loomed high above the land, its white stone walls towering like a mountain. It was beautiful, but to Finn it was nothing more than a prison that had stolen his life. He pulled his hood lower over his face and slipped into the city streets. The guards stood at every gate, watching carefully for intruders. He needed a way inside. And then luck found him. A group of servants was entering through the side gates, carrying baskets of food and supplies. Finn fell in step behind them, walking as if he belonged. The guards barely glanced his way, and just like that he was inside the castle. His heart pounded. This was where he was meant to grow up. This was where he should have played as a child, where he should have learned how to rule. He gritted his teeth. She took it all from me, but now he was here, and he was going to make her pay. Finn moved through the castle halls with ease. The memories of his childhood didn't exist, but something about the place felt familiar. He could sense the weight of his past pressing against him. Then he saw her, the Queen. She was standing in the grand hall, speaking to a group of nobles. She was beautiful, elegant, dressed in a flowing gown of deep red. But her beauty was cold, sharp like the edge of a blade. Her eyes, icy and cruel, scanned the room with disinterest. Finn felt rage claw its way up his throat. This woman had thrown him into a river. She had stolen his life. And now she stood there smiling as if she was untouchable. He took a step forward, but before he could do anything, a hand grabbed his arm. He turned sharply, ready to fight, but the person holding him wasn't a guard. It was a girl. She was around his age, with fiery auburn hair and piercing green eyes. She looked at him with curiosity and suspicion. "What are you doing here?" she whispered. Finn swallowed his anger. "Who are you?" she smirked. "I should be asking you the same thing." Finn hesitated. He couldn't reveal himself yet. "I'm just looking for work." The girl raised an eyebrow, clearly not believing him. "Liar. You don't belong here." Before he could argue, she pulled him into a dark hallway. "You're either very brave or very stupid," she muttered. Finn scowled. "Let go of me." She did. "If the Queen catches you sneaking around, you'll be executed." Finn's jaw clenched. "I don't care." The girl studied him. Then her expression softened. "You're not here by accident, are you?" Finn exhaled. He couldn't trust her, not yet. But something about her felt different. Before he could respond, voices echoed down the hall. "Find the boy, someone saw him sneaking in." Finn's blood turned cold. The guards were looking for him. The girl cursed under her breath. "Follow me, now." Against his better judgment, Finn followed as she led him through hidden passageways. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lena," she whispered. "And if you want to stay alive, you'd better listen to me." Finn had no choice for now, but he wasn't leaving this castle without facing the Queen. And when he did, he would make her regret the day she tried to kill him. Finn followed Lena through the dark corridors of the castle, his heart pounding like a war drum in his chest. The guards were close, too close. Their armored boots clanked against the stone floor as they shouted orders, their torches casting eerie shadows along the walls. Lena moved swiftly, her steps silent. She was clearly familiar with the castle's hidden paths, which only raised more questions. Who was she? Why was she helping him? They slipped into a small chamber, the air thick with dust and the scent of old parchment. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with scrolls and books. A library. Lena shut the door softly behind them, pressing her ear against it. The sound of guards faded as they moved further down the hall. "We're safe. For now," she whispered, turning to face Finn. He exhaled, his fingers still clutching the pendant. In his pocket, he had been so close to the Queen, so close to confronting the woman who had thrown him away like garbage. But now he was hiding like a scared child. It made his blood boil. Lena studied him, her sharp green eyes narrowing. "Who are you?" Finn hesitated. He couldn't afford to trust anyone, not yet. "No one important," he muttered. Lena scoffed. "Liar. No one sneaks into the castle unless they have a reason. And you, she pointed at him, look, like you want to slit the queen's throat. Finn stiffened. She was too perceptive. I have my reasons, he said darkly. Lena crossed her arms. I'm sure you do. But if you plan to kill the queen, you're going to need a much better strategy than sneaking into the throne room like an idiot. Finn clenched his jaw. He didn't like her tone, but she wasn't wrong. I'll figure it out. Lena raised an eyebrow. Alone? Yes, she smirked. Good luck with that. Finn frowned. Why do you care? Lena was silent for a moment. Then she sighed and turned away, running her fingers along the spines of the old books. Because I hate her too, she muttered. Finn's eyes widened slightly. Lena scoffed. Don't look so surprised. You're not the only one who wants the queen dead. Finn took a cautious step closer. Why? Lena's jaw tightened, and for the first time, Finn saw something behind her bold attitude. Pain. She destroyed my family, she said quietly. My father was a nobleman who dared to stand against her. She had him executed. My mother died in exile, and I stayed behind, pretended to be useful. But one day, I'll make her pay. Finn's fists clenched. The queen's cruelty knew no limits. We want the same thing, he said. Lena gave him a knowing look. Maybe, but revenge is tricky, fisherman boy. His stomach twisted at the nickname. He wasn't a fisherman's son. He wasn't a peasant. He was the rightful prince of this kingdom, and he was going to take back what was his. Lena studied him, tilting her head. You're different, she murmured. You don't act like a commoner. You have fire in you. Finn exhaled slowly. He had a choice to make. He could keep hiding the truth, or he could take a chance. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the golden pendant. It shimmered in the dim candlelight, the emblem of the royal family unmistakable. Lena's eyes widened. She looked at Finn, then at the pendant, then back at Finn. Her breath caught in her throat. No, she whispered. That's not possible. Finn met her gaze. I was supposed to die, he said, his voice like steel. The queen threw me into the river as a baby, but I survived. Lena took a step back, her hands trembling. Finn nodded. I'm the lost prince. A heavy silence filled the air. Lena stared at him, her mind racing. Then, after a long moment, she let out a breathless, shaky laugh. Well, she muttered, shaking her head in disbelief. This just got interesting. Lena didn't question him after that. If anything, she seemed excited by the revelation. You're the rightful heir, she whispered. If the people knew, Finn cut her off. They don't know. And if I go public now, the queen will kill me before I can prove anything. Lena nodded. You're right, we have to be smart about this. We? Finn raised an eyebrow. Lena smirked. Oh, you're not getting rid of me now, Prince. You need someone who knows the castle, and I need someone who can actually challenge the queen. Finn hesitated, but he knew she was right. He couldn't do this alone. Lena leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. I have a plan. Finn crossed his arms. I'm listening. Lena's eyes gleamed. Tomorrow night there's a royal banquet. All the nobles will be there, including the queen. Finn frowned. So, Lena grinned. That's when we make our move. Finn's heart pounded. He had waited his whole life for this moment. The queen had stolen everything from him, and now it was time to take it back. The next night the castle was alive with music, laughter, and the clinking of goblets. The grand banquet hall glittered with chandeliers, their golden light reflecting off the polished marble floors. Nobles in rich silks and embroidered finery moved about, sipping wine and exchanging pleasantries. Servants weaved through the crowd, refilling glasses and carrying trays of roasted meats and fruits. At the head of the long banquet table, the queen sat on her throne, draped in a deep crimson gown. A golden crown rested atop her dark curls, and her sharp eyes scanned the room with an air of cold control. Finn, hidden behind a set of heavy curtains on the balcony, gritted his teeth. He had imagined this moment for years, standing in the same room as the woman who had thrown him away, watching her revel in the power she had stolen. But now that he was here, his hands itched for a dagger. Beside him, Lena placed a steadying hand on his arm. "Not yet," she whispered. Finn forced himself to take a breath. She was right. Their plan needed precision. They weren't here to cause a scene. They were here to expose the queen. Lena had worked fast, slipping whispers into the right ears, planting doubts where they would fester. The nobility was already questioning the queen's rule, her greed, her cruelty, the way she had drained the kingdom for her own luxuries. All they needed was the final push, proof. And Finn was that proof. Lena nudged him. "Get ready." Finn nodded, pulling his hood low as they slipped down a hidden staircase, blending into the servants weaving in and out of the banquet hall. His heart pounded in his chest. Then the moment came. A nobleman at the far end of the hall rose to his feet, clearing his throat. The room fell into an expectant silence. "My queen," the noble said, bowing his head slightly. "Forgive my boldness, but rumors have been swirling through the kingdom. Whispers of a child, a prince who was lost to the river many years ago." The queen's grip on her goblet tightened ever so slightly. Finn saw it. The noble continued, his voice steady. "They say this prince survived, that he lives." The queen exhaled a slow, measured breath. "And who, dear lord, is spreading such foolishness?" "I wonder the same," another noblewoman chimed in, feigning innocence. "After all, if the prince had survived, he would be our rightful king, wouldn't he?" A murmur rippled through the room. Finn saw the queen's knuckles whiten as she forced a smile. "The rumors are nonsense," she said smoothly. "The prince died in the river that night. I grieved for him, as did the king." Lena leaned into Finn's ear. "That's your cue." Finn's heart pounded like a war drum. This was it. He stepped forward, pulling back his hood as he walked toward the table, his boots echoing through the hall. The murmurs died. A dead silence fell over the banquet. Every noble in the room turned toward him, their eyes wide with confusion. The queen's face remained composed, but her grip on her goblet had turned so tight that Finn swore he could hear the metal bending under her fingers. Then he spoke. "Lies." His voice was calm, steady, but it carried through the hall like a thunderclap. The queen slowly rose from her seat. "Who are you?" Finn stepped closer. His hand slipped into his pocket, fingers brushing against the golden pendant. "You know who I am," he said, holding the pendant up for all to see. Gasps rippled through the nobles. The emblem of the royal family gleamed in the candlelight. The queen's face paled. "That," Finn said, his voice turning cold, "was around my neck the night you threw me into the river." The silence stretched long and heavy. Then chaos erupted. The nobles exploded into whispers and shouts. Some jumped to their feet. Some exchanged horrified glances while others stared at the queen in shock. The queen, to her credit, did not flinch. She did not break. Instead, she tilted her chin up, her icy eyes locking onto Finn's. "That is not possible," she said, her voice like a dagger. Finn let out a humorless laugh. "And yet, here I stand." The nobles turned to the queen, their gazes demanding answers. "If he is lying," one of them called out, "prove it." "Yes, your majesty," another added, stepping forward. "Surely a simple truth test would settle this matter." The queen stiffened. For the first time, Finn saw something flicker in her cold expression. Fear. She had spent years building her power, silencing anyone who threatened her rule. But she had never prepared for this. A voice suddenly rang out from the entrance of the hall. "My queen!" A guard stormed in, his face pale with urgency. He knelt before her, whispering something too low for the nobles to hear. But Finn caught it. "The king is dead." The queen froze. For the first time that night, her mask cracked. Finn's breath caught. The king, his father, was dead? He barely had time to process it before another wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd. The timing was too perfect. The king had died just as the lost prince revealed himself. Too convenient, too suspicious. Lena's eyes flicked to Finn's. She killed him, she whispered. She must have. Finn's stomach turned. The queen turned to the nobles, her face carefully composed once more. The king is gone, she said, voice strong despite the tension in her body. The kingdom is in mourning. We must not let the words of an impostor distract us from our grief. A calculated move, turning their attention elsewhere, trying to bury the truth. Finn clenched his fists. Not this time, he stepped forward, his voice ringing out clear and unshaken. This kingdom will not be ruled by a murderer. Gasps filled the room. The queen snapped her gaze to him, her eyes like frozen steel. How dare you? Finn didn't flinch. He didn't bow. He stood taller. I am the rightful heir, he declared, turning to the nobles. I am the king's son, and I will not let the woman who tried to kill me sit on that throne. The nobles looked between Finn and the queen, and then one of them knelt, then another and another, until half the hall had bent the knee before Finn. The queen's lips parted slightly, her mask of control slipping further. For the first time, she was losing. But she wasn't done yet. With a flick of her wrist, the guards around the room drew their swords. The room tensed. Finn's fingers curled around the hilt of his own dagger. The battle for the throne had just begun. The hall was frozen in time. Nobles held their breath, torn between fear and loyalty. The queen's guard stood ready, swords gleaming in the candlelight. And Finn, the rightful heir, held his ground. Lena tensed beside him, her hand drifting toward the small blade hidden beneath her cloak. She leaned in. This could turn ugly fast, she whispered. Finn didn't take his eyes off the queen. She won't surrender. No, Lena agreed, but neither should we. The queen slowly stepped down from the dais, her deep crimson gown trailing behind her like blood on the marble floor. Her eyes were locked on Finn, unreadable, yet calculating. You dare challenge me, she said softly. Finn clenched his fists. I don't challenge you. His voice rang out across the hall. I replace you. Gasps rippled through the nobles, but the queen only smiled, a slow, cold smirk that sent a chill down Finn's spine. I should have drowned you myself, she murmured. Finn's blood boiled. Lena nudged him, her voice urgent. This is getting dangerous. It was. The queen hadn't given the order yet, but she didn't need to. The tension in the air was thick enough to snap. At any moment, chaos would erupt. Finn took a slow step forward, his voice unwavering. You took everything from me. His fingers brushed the hilt of his dagger. My birthright, my family, my life. The queen tilted her head. Then perhaps I should finish what I started. She lifted her hand. Seize him! The room exploded into movement. Guards lunged forward, swords raised. Nobles gasped and scrambled back, knocking over goblets and plates in their rush to escape the brewing battle. Finn dodged the first strike, twisting out of the way as a blade whistled past his ear. He slammed his shoulder into the nearest guard, sending him sprawling across the table. Lena was already moving, slipping between the chaos like a shadow, her dagger flashing in the dim light. She ducked beneath a soldier's strike and slashed upward, leaving a trail of red in her wake. Move! She shouted at Finn. Finn barely had time to react before another sword came at him. He yanked a silver platter from the table, blocking. The attack then drove his fist into the guard's stomach. The man stumbled and Finn snatched his sword from his grasp. The room was a storm of steel and screams. Guards tried to cut him down, but Finn was fast, faster than they expected. He dodged, weaved, countered. He had spent years surviving, learning how to fight with whatever he could. And right now, he was fighting for his throne. Across the hall, the queen stood untouched, watching with cold amusement. Finn growled and pushed forward, toward her. But before he could reach her, the great doors of the hall burst open. A flood of armed men stormed in, their armor glinting with the crest of the royal family, the king's guards. The nobles turned in shock as the commander of the king's forces stepped forward, his sharp eyes scanning the battlefield. What is the meaning of this? He demanded. The queen's lips parted, but for once she didn't have an immediate answer. Finn seized the moment. She tried to have me killed, he called out, his voice loud enough for all to hear. She stole the throne. She murdered the king. Murmurs spread like wildfire. The commander's gaze snapped to the queen. Your Majesty, he said carefully, is this true? The queen's mask cracked, just slightly. Then she laughed, low, cold, dangerous. You dare turn against me? She said. After all I've done? The commander hesitated, but not for long. The king is dead. His voice was firm. And if you are guilty of treason, you will answer for it. The queen's expression darkened. For the first time in her life, she had lost control. Finn took a step forward. The people will not follow you, he said, voice steady. The nobles will not defend you. He glanced around the room. The once loyal court refused to meet her gaze. She was alone. She knew it. Her lips curled. Slowly, she reached for the dagger hidden at her waist. If I cannot have this throne, she murmured, then neither will you. Then she lunged. The queen's dagger flashed in the candlelight as she lunged, her movements swift and precise. Finn barely had time to react. Clang. He barely dodged the blade as it sliced through the air, just missing his throat. The queen was fast. Faster than he had expected. She moved like a serpent, her dagger slashing again, aiming straight for his chest. Finn raised his sword, blocking the attack just in time. Metal scraped against metal, the sound piercing through the chaos of the banquet hall. The nobles had scattered, their screams echoing against the high walls. The guards stood frozen, unsure whether to intervene. The queen and the lost prince were locked in battle, and no one dared step between them. Finn pushed back, breaking free from her blade's reach. His heart pounded. You're a coward, he said, circling her, throwing a baby into a river, poisoning a king. But now that you're losing, you decide to fight your own battles? The queen smirked. A queen does what she must. She lunged again. This time Finn was ready. He sidestepped, knocking her wrist aside. The dagger flew from her grasp, clattering against the marble floor. The queen stumbled back, her breath ragged, but she didn't retreat. Instead, she laughed. Low, amused, unshaken. You think this is over? She asked. Finn's grip tightened on his sword. It is. Her smile widened. Then suddenly, the doors burst open again. A wave of new soldiers stormed in, clad in the queen's personal colors. Unlike the royal guards, these men were loyal only to her, assassins, mercenaries, traitors. Finn's stomach dropped. The queen lifted her chin, serene once more. You underestimated me, she purred. The mercenaries charged. Lena was the first to react. She threw a dagger, burying it in the throat of the nearest attacker before kicking over a table to create barrier. Finn whirled around, barely blocking a blade aimed at his back. He clashed swords with one of the queen's men, twisting his wrist and disarming him with a quick strike. The nobles panicked, fleeing toward the side entrances as the battle raged through the banquet hall. The commander of the king's guard roared, "Defend the rightful heir!" His men rallied, pushing back against the queen's assassins. Swords clashed, blood spilled. But Finn's focus was only on one person, the queen. She was retreating, backing toward the grand staircase. Finn shoved past the chaos, cutting down one of her guards as he chased after her. She turned and ran, her crimson gown billowing behind her. Finn followed, up the staircase, down the candlelit corridors. She was heading for the tower. Finn pushed himself faster. His lungs burned, but he didn't stop. Not this time. The queen burst through the final door at the top of the tower, stepping onto the open balcony. The night air was cold, the wind howling against the stone walls. Finn followed her out, sword still in hand. The queen turned to face him. She was cornered. But she wasn't afraid. She was smiling. Finn hesitated. Why was she smiling? Then he saw it. A vial of dark liquid in her hand. Poison. His breath caught. She uncorked the vial and lifted it to her lips. If I cannot rule, she murmured, then I refuse to be judged. She drank. Finn lunged forward, grabbing her wrist, but it was too late. The poison worked fast. The queen stumbled, her body convulsing as the liquid burned through her. Veins. Her face twisted in pain, but she still managed to smirk through it. Her knees buckled. She collapsed onto the cold stone floor. Finn crouched beside her, his breath heavy. He watched as the life faded from her eyes. Her last words were barely a whisper. "I should have drowned you myself." Then, she was gone. The wind howled around them, carrying away the last breath of the woman who had stolen everything from him. Finn slowly rose to his feet, staring down at her lifeless body. It was over. The reign of the false queen had ended, and Finn, the lost prince, had won. The queen was dead. Her body lay motionless on the cold stone balcony, her crimson gown pooling around her like a final dark stain on the kingdom she had ruled with deceit. For a long moment, Finn just stood there, his breath heavy in the night air. He had waited his whole life for this moment, for justice, and yet as he stared at her lifeless face, he felt no triumph, only emptiness. Behind him, the sounds of battle had died down. The last of the queen's mercenaries had either fled or been defeated. The palace guards, finally recognizing their true king, had surrendered. Footsteps pounded up the tower stairs. Lena appeared, her cloak torn, blood smeared on her cheek. Not her own, he hoped. She stopped when she saw the queen's body. "She's gone?" Finn nodded. Lena let out a slow breath. "It's over." Finn wasn't so sure. He turned back to the balcony, looking out over the kingdom. The city stretched out beneath him, its rooftops glowing under the pale light of the moon. Somewhere out there, people still lived under the fear his stepmother had created. The nobles, the merchants, the poor. None of them knew yet that the false queen was dead. And when they did, what would happen next? The kingdom had been ruled by lies and cruelty for so long. Would the people even accept him? Lena must have sensed his hesitation because she stepped closer. "This is your kingdom now, Finn." Finn let out a humorless chuckle. "Is it?" He turned to face her. "I wasn't raised in a palace, Lena. I don't know court politics. I don't know how to rule. You know how to fight. I know how to survive," he corrected. "And that's exactly what this kingdom needs." She placed a hand on his shoulder, her eyes steady. "A king who understands the people. Not a tyrant, not a coward. A survivor." The weight of her words settled over him. Could he do this? Could he rebuild what she had destroyed? The thought was overwhelming, terrifying. But then he thought of the people who had suffered, the farmers starving under heavy taxes, the soldiers executed for questioning orders, the families torn apart by the queen's rule. They deserved more than another greedy ruler. They deserved a king, and he was the last one left. Finn took a deep breath, steeling himself. "Then I'll do it." He met Lena's gaze. "I'll take the throne." Lena smirked. "About time." The distant sound of horns echoed through the city. The castle gates had been thrown open. The people were gathering, sensing that something had changed. Finn turned back toward the hall, toward the throne room. It was time to claim what was his. Hours later, the great hall was filled. Nobles, knights, servants, all had gathered. Some looked nervous, others skeptical. Some were whispering, wondering if this so-called lost prince was truly fit to rule. Finn stood before the throne, the same throne his father had once ruled from, the same throne his stepmother had stolen. The weight of it pressed down on him, heavier than any sword. A hush fell over the crowd as the commander of the royal guard stepped forward. He cleared his throat, then spoke. "We gather here tonight to witness the return of our true king. The blood of our fallen ruler flows through his veins. The rightful heir has returned." Murmurs rippled through the hall. Finn slowly lowered himself onto the throne. It felt cold beneath him, heavy, but he did not waver. The commander turned to face the crowd. "All hail King Finn." For a moment, silence. Then, a single voice rose in the hall. Long live the king! Another joined in, then another. The cry spread like wildfire. Long live the king! Long live the king! The nobles who once whispered now bowed. The knights who once hesitated now knelt. The kingdom had a new ruler. Finn sat back on the throne. His throne. He had survived. Now he had to lead. The echoes of Long Live the King still rang through the great hall. The people had accepted him, but Finn knew this was only the beginning. Taking the throne was one thing. Keeping it and proving he was worthy was another. As the nobles bowed and the knights knelt, Finn's mind raced. He had spent his entire life running, fighting, surviving, but ruling. That was a battle of a different kind. He took a deep breath and rose from the throne. The hall fell silent once more. "I thank you for your loyalty," Finn said, his voice steady, carrying across the grand chamber. "But we must speak the truth. This kingdom has suffered under a tyrant for too long." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some looked uneasy. Others nodded. "My stepmother ruled with fear and greed. She bled this land dry, turning its people into pawns for her own power." Finn's gaze swept across the hall. "That ends tonight." A murmur of approval ran through the gathered nobles and soldiers. Finn turned to the commander of the royal guard. "Send word across the kingdom. The queen is dead. Her mercenaries have fallen. The gates of the castle are open once more." The commander bowed. "It will be done, your majesty." Lena stepped beside Finn, lowering her voice. "And what of her supporters? The ones who still hide in the shadows, waiting for a chance to strike?" Finn's jaw tightened. "They will answer for their crimes." He turned to the assembled court. "To those who aided the queen in her tyranny, your time of privilege is over." A few of the nobles shifted, exchanging nervous glances. They had profited under the queen's rule. They had turned a blind eye to her cruelty, and they knew what was coming next. "I will not rule with the same cruelty she did," Finn continued, "but justice will be served." He turned to the guards. "Anyone found guilty of aiding in the queen's murders, oppression, or treason will face trial." One of the queen's former advisors stepped forward, his voice trembling. "Your Majesty, surely we can find another way. We only did what was necessary to survive." Finn's gaze hardened. The people of this kingdom had to survive too, and they had no choice. The advisor paled and fell silent. Lena smirked. "Looks like you're learning how to be a king after all." Finn glanced at her. "I had a good teacher." Lena shrugged. "That, and you've always been too stubborn to fail." Finn turned back to the hall. He could feel the weight of 100 eyes on him, waiting for his next move. He had survived. He had won. And now he had to build something new. Taking the throne had been the first step. But the battle for the kingdom's future was just beginning. Finn straightened, his voice strong as he spoke the words that would shape the fate of his land. "This is only the start. From this day forward, we rebuild." The cheers rose again, louder, stronger. A new era had begun, and the lost prince had finally come home.